All right, guys, Steve O'Connor, I'm back with you here. Today, I was hearing on the radio a back and forth between Secretary of State Rubio and an idiotic senator. This is Tammy Duckworth. She's out of Illinois. So go figure. You're going to be shocked, of course, that she's not in favor of the immigration factors and the things that are going on. But just watch the video. I'm going to unfold this a little bit for you.
Is that correct? Both of you? Senator Van Hollen? Are you going to yield to Senator Duckworth? Okay. Senator Duckworth.
I thank my colleagues. My daughter has dental surgery, so they're being very kind so I can get her to that.
Probably got to get her to
Thank
the
you.
vet.
Mr. Secretary, last March, the President invoked the Alien Enemies Act, a notorious wartime law last used for Japanese internment. He said that he was responding to the Maduro regime's supposed invasion or other acts of war against the United States. But in recent weeks, you, the Department of Justice, and our friends across the aisle have repeatedly said that we are not at war with Venezuela. Secretary Rubio, if that is true and we are not at war with Venezuela, will you advise the President to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
Well, that was a mechanism to remove people from our country that prevent grave danger. So, for example, we know for a fact that Trinidad Agua is a very dangerous gang. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I may have been the first member of Congress.
This is a wartime act, Mr. Secretary.
Well,
are we at
Okay, so I'll pause right there. I'm going to make the first comment here that kind of cracks me up. Now, Secretary of State Rubio, he's a rocking guy. I do love this guy. I think we're talking future president. Maybe him and Vance are going to be on the next ticket together after Trump. At least I hope so. However, the funniest part in the world is this Duckworth last name, about as stupid as she looks. But anyway, the bottom line is with Rubio, he's sitting there having to answer a question that she's posing that is invalid on its face to begin with. We're not at war with Venezuela, and why? Well, it's real simple, because we took the ruler and his wife, we deposed them in the middle of the night. You cannot be at war with a country that is without a leader, and a country that is very thrilled that we actually took him away. So ergo, her entire argument on its face is already moot.
Are we currently at war with Venezuela?
No, we're not in a state of war in Venezuela.
Okay, the Supreme Court has described the Alien Enemies Act as a wartime power, our Supreme Court. And before now, the Alien...
And so again, we'd have to be at war right now for that to actually happen. And of course, as a member of the Senate, she should be smart enough to know that if we are at war, that the President of the United States needs the Senate, needs Congress to declare war. Okay, so it's rather ironic that she's going down this road. I think Rubio probably should have slammed her on this, but he's playing ball.
Enemies Act was only invoked during the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, when it was used to intern thousands of innocent civilians. Are you really arguing that the President should be able to wield an internment law?
No, but we're talking about two separate things here. So you're talking about the state of Venezuela, or are describing the regime. And we're talking about, but what the President designated...
invoked the Alien Enemies Act.
I know, Senator, but let me be clear with you. No, but what the President was talking about are these gangs that have, and these narco-trafficking groups that are waging war on the United States. There's no doubt. These groups have waged war on the United States. They have waged, for example, Trinidad Agua is not just a criminal gang presence in our street. It is a criminal gang directly responsible for narco-trafficking.
The Trump administration has acknowledged that the vast majority of the men it rounded up and deported to torture under this law had no criminal records whatsoever.
We didn't torture
Independent, over 75%.
Who did we torture? We haven't tortured anybody. We've arrested people that are members of gangs, and we've deported them. We don't want gang members in our country.
Have found that many of the men were here legally. If the administration is willing to lie about who it's...
Okay, so let's pause right there. This lady is deflecting and lying. She's completely trying to gaslight the public right there. Even in her statement, when she says the people that ICE has arrested for torture, she's actually implying, and it's almost like the whole gaslighting thing. It's like it goes into the domestic violence factor. Just as an example, there are a lot of women that believe they're worthless because after living with somebody for 10 years, being told they're worthless in domestic violence, there's the whole psychological infusion that they finally succumb to the gaslighting that they've been fed, and they believe, yes, they're worthless. So this lady is trying to do like the subliminal, let's just slip this in, that we arrest them to torture them. Mind you, I'm going to argue one other point here that is quite comical. This lady is a senator for the state of Illinois. Her job, her entire role is to represent her constituency. I don't know if she thinks that everybody who lives in Illinois is against having bad people deported from our country. Let's go under her simple rule that when she says, okay, 75% of them were legal. That's a lie because we don't deport legal people. That's number one. And they do go through the judicial system. There is adjudication on that. There are immigration judges that see them and will make their decisions based on that. So let's go on a simple standard. If 75% that were deported, they were not legal, they're illegal, but if they were deported because they'd have to be deported, they were already illegal. That leaves the other 25% that were violent criminals. Violent. And what I'd like you to do is think about that. Estimates go all over the place. Some say we've deported as many as 650,000 illegals. Some have said around 350,000. I'm going to go on an even low side. And let's just say that we deported 300,000 people. If 25% of those were the most violent of violent criminals out of 300,000, so 25%, that's 75,000. Okay? What I want you to do is think about this. Of course, I live in California. I've said this. I'm a retired peace officer from California. I want you to think about it from this perspective. A lot of people know Newport Beach, probably only second to Manhattan for one of the most expensive areas in the country to live. But Newport is around 70 to 80,000 populace. Just imagine if 75,000 people, an entire mid to large size city. By the way, a mid-size average city in the United States is really estimated around 35 to 40,000. Just for reference, people, imagine filling two cities or one fairly large city with 70,000 violent criminals. And they're not going to be contained in one area. So they're going to leave. That means the other 75,000, when she tries to argue that we've deported 75,000 people who were not violent, that doesn't matter. The term illegal is illegal. If they're here illegally, then they have no legal status to be here, ergo, deport them. Pretty simple.
Targeting under this law, what protections do totally innocent people have against abuse? Again, I want to ask you, will you advise the president to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies
No, of course
Act?
not. I mean, these are people that are threats to the national security of the United States. But I've described this in hearings in the past, including
So
before
you're
you guys.
saying that we're at war?
We are absolutely, when it comes to narco trafficking groups and criminal gangs that are targeting the United States for criminal
We're in a
activity,
state of war.
there's no doubt about the fact that we're
So then,
confronting them in
do
a
the
warlike setting
international
because they're
laws of
waging
war
war on us.
apply, and do the Geneva Convention
They're waging
apply?
war against us, and they're enemy combatants as a result of it. And the fact of the matter is that we are confronting these irregular groups, and that's one of the great challenges of the new century in this hemisphere in particular, is that these non-state actors who possess state-like capabilities in terms of their weaponry pose a grave danger to the United States. I don't think any American.
Let's explain that. When he means non-state actors, meaning they're not an official military, a declared military, but they act in the capacity of a military as they wage war against the United States and other countries by sending in their illegal drugs to destroy our countries from the inside out. Now, I'm one of those people that always goes under the standard of you weren't walking down the street and tripped and fell down and shoved the goddamn shoved an 8-ball of coke or methamphetamine up your nose. No, you did not. You made a conscious choice to start doing drugs. However, that does not dismiss the fact that you have a lot of weeping mothers and fathers out there that have lost their children to this crap. And if it wasn't in our country, they might have never gone down that road and could have led a normal, happy, productive life. But what Rubio's talking about here is the fact that the president goes on the forefront to protect our citizens. This lady, as a senator of her city, should definitely want 75,000 worth of people. Like I said, on the low end, if they are violent criminals out of her state, out of the country. But it's insanity that she's turning this into a political thing. Mind you, folks, remember, you've elected somebody in your state to represent you, to represent what is best for you, your family, your productivity, your well-being, your livelihood, all of those kinds of things. Now, granted, there's arguments about how much a senator really provides of that, but that's a story for another day. However, we expect our elected officials to want to do things that is for the betterment of their state, that they want to do things to help their constituents lead a better, more productive, and safer life, not going into Congress and sitting there and grilling the current Secretary of State about how upset you are because we've killed narco traffickers, people that will kill other people in a second if they believe they're going to be caught. And that would include police officers. So this is an absolutely ridiculous argument.
Would
Will
dispute
will
that we
the
have
president
cartels that pose a threat to the
comply
national
with
security of the
all of
United
the
States.
other laws of when it comes to warfare? I mean, you're saying that he can invoke this wartime power.
No, I'm saying, you're asking me, I'm here to.
Listen to what that shit just said. She just sat there and said, you're expecting cartels to comply with the Geneva Convention, which they never do because they are gangs. They're illegitimate people that are not a recognized military. Prime example, you can even go to Northern Ireland, right? The whole argument the whole time is, why was the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, labeled as terrorists, right? They wanted to be recognized as a legitimate military. However, the way they waged war was that the Brits actually said, no, you are not. You wage war in a terroristic fashion. You are not part of the Geneva Convention. You're not a recognized military, and therefore they deem them as terrorists. It's along the same lines as what we're doing with all these cartels. They have advanced weaponry. It's supplied to them was originally by Venezuela, a lot of it coming from Russia, a lot of it coming from China. So they have the ability to wage war that is far beyond that of just your poo-butt gangs on the street that are running around carrying a gun, 90% of the time loaded with the wrong round for that weapon that they've stolen.
Discuss foreign policy and what's in the realm of the Department of State.
Well, you
I think your questions are better directed to the
invoking
Department
the
of
Alien
Justice.
Enemies Act,
But I would tell
which
you
is
that
a wartime, which is something that
Yeah,
our
but you're
Supreme
asking me a
Court
question
said
that's-
can be invoked during
All right, but
wartime.
you're
And it's
asking
only
me a
been
question
invoked
that's
during the
more
War of
appro-
1812, World War I, and World War II.
You're
It's only
asking
been
me a
invoked 3
question-
times, and this president is invoking it.
Okay, you're asking me a question about the domestic application of a law that's best directed.
It's not
Invoked under conventional wars. How many people here want to guess that from 1812 to World War I to World War II, how many gangs existed out there in the world, acting as though they are a military that would be willing to go up against the military might of the United States? That wouldn't have existed during any one of those 3 wars, especially going back to 1812 is utterly ridiculous. And of course, that's when the Brits tried to retake America for a second time and got their asses handed to them. Anyway,
a
Department of Justice.
complication. It's
No,
not a
it is
complication. It's
because you're
very
asking me
simple.
something to opine on something that's in the realm of the Department of Justice in terms of its domestic application.
Exactly.
I can tell you that the United States is most certainly confronting terrorist and criminal organizations operating in our hemisphere that pose a grave danger to the United States. Anyone who believes that gangs that flood our country with fentanyl
right,
or
let me
cocaine
ask you
are
this.
not threats to the United States is not living in reality and certainly does not reflect the opinion of most Americans.
The president already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela again. So we're at war right now.
did he
So
say
if
that?
things don't go well with the Chavistas you've empowered,
When did the
what
president
is your
say he was gonna put
criteria for
troops in
returning
Venezuela?
a military option, what is your criteria for returning to a military option and putting boots on?
Well,
the ground?
I don't recall the president saying he was going to put troops in Venezuela. Where did he say that?
I'm asking you, what are your?
But that's what you said. I didn't
Yeah,
remember
the president has
saying
already
that.
said that he was ready to put American troops in.
see, this lady is more emotional incontinence. She is just bleeding on her emotions. She's not coming with actual facts. She's not coming with logic, because if she employed logic for one moment, she would realize that everything President Trump is doing right now, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is a good thing. We're protecting our shores and our borders from people trafficking illegal drugs into our country that is literally destroying us from the inside out. But she's purely playing politics. So good on the people of Illinois that elected this retard.
Venezuela.
No, I think the president has said that he retains the right as commander-in-chief to protect the United States against any imminent threats.
Exactly.
Maybe that involves troops, maybe that involves air power. We hope, but we don't anticipate that being the case in Venezuela.
I worry that you are playing fast and loose with our nation's
Well, I just gave you
military. And
testimony
let me
here
just say,
for
I just want to conclude by
Yeah,
saying
but I just gave you testimony of how well things are moving forward, not as fast as
but
everybody
you
would like.
also said
So
that
why-
in 6 or 9 months, if things don't go well, you're going to have to do something else. And the president's already said that he's not ruled out the military option. And you've also just said that, yes, we are at war. The president has
But
wartime
every
powers.
president retains
So
the power
it's
to use military to
reasonable for me
protect.
to ask you,
And I gave you a very specific example.
He's absolutely right. When she talks about that he wouldn't rule out military, of course, the president could do that. 6 months down the line, things don't go right. It doesn't work the way we want, not only with the narco traffickers, he can use more military if he wants. And of course, if the regime change does not occur proper in Venezuela to actually become more of a democratic or republic type of governance again, well, then guess what? We're not going to allow another dictatorship to take over there. And of course, there will be likely influence that could come from Russia or China or Iran. Why? It's in their best interest because they were the ones that were supplying all the arms and a lot of the drugs over there that was then being trafficked from Venezuela up to the United States. So logic says that yes, those three countries will want to actually get in the midst of what we're doing down in Venezuela. They don't want the change to happen. They're probably likely upset and trying to figure out how they can upset the apple cart further. So obviously, if we had to do a military response to anything that they do to upset the whole regime change that we've just initiated, we're going to do it.
Every president retains the right to defend the United States against an imminent threat. Yes, if there are Iranian, just give you an example, Iranian drones deployed in Venezuela that could threaten the United States, we most certainly will address that, even if it's located in Venezuela. But we hope we don't get to that point. We don't expect to get to that point.
I don't think that
we're not trending in that direction. That's a fact. But that said, you know, on
the
one
people
hand,
of America
people
are worried
unhappy.
that this is a
That said, also, whatever Trump's choosing to do will not be stated or signaled ahead of time, like the whole previous dementia regime that we had, where that moron went on there half the time while he was blithering in his diapers, and he had no clue about what was going on with our military, let alone anything that they would be doing that could be covert or clandestine. And of course, why is that? Because he was an incompetent president. But a competent president like Trump is going to stand up and say, not ruling out the military, but he won't signal to our enemies what the hell we're going to do.
president who engages in yet another forever war, Mr. Secretary. We don't need to be in another forever war, and that is the path that we are going towards.
That's interesting. That's a path we're going towards with a forever war. I don't think that any more wars could have been going on before Trump took office. He's quilled 8 of them right now, stopped them. The only problems left right now is, of course, the Ukraine with Russia still. But of course, he ended the Israeli problems. All the problems that were going on in Africa, he's ending that. He's got cooperation in the Middle East again. He's actually been so successful, it's unreal. Should have got the Nobel Peace Prize, which is why the girl from Venezuela gave him hers, because she knows that he's earned it. He has actually stopped more wars in this world than many other presidents in the past combined. And yet, this woman's sitting here going, we don't need to be in a forever war. We're not. You can't be in a war with a country where you just literally took their dictator with not a single loss of American life. I mean, how stupid is this lady?
Let me just say.
Well, how are we going towards a forever war if we're dealing with Delcy Rodriguez every day?
Option. You're not going to ask him to rescind his invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. That puts Americans in jeopardy. And let me just say something about the president's recent comments about NATO allies. When I served in Iraq, there were Polish forces there with us. There were British forces there with us. There were Spanish forces there with us. I personally landed in Elzi, España, which came under direct attack by insurgents. Polish troops who worked with the Illinois military, with the Illinois National Guard for 30 years, died in Afghanistan, Mr. Secretary.
All the president wants is for NATO to have more
our NATO allies have stood beside us.
He wants our allies to have more NATO.
And we need to maintain the strength of that alliance.
I get it.
All the president wants is our allies. Your time's up. Not making much progress.
She's pretty stupid because she's talking about anybody in NATO, which we pay 70% of NATO. We are NATO. NATO doesn't exist without the U.S. That's a fact. Number one is, during World War I and World War II, the only things that we really asked at the end of those wars was a place to bury our dead. Many of our boys lie over there in Europe. That's number one. Number two is for NATO to finally step up and send in some of their usually substandard troops outside of, not the UK. The UK are locked on. But they send in their troops to actually try to contribute and do something. And people, this lady's sitting there arguing about how many troops may have died from NATO or how many may have participated. The argument becomes real simple. Our boys have died in every major war to give you your freedom back. Europe would not exist without America. So that is a completely hypocritical statement to even state on its face. It's just ludicrous. Bottom line is, this lady's a moron. She's busy wanting to advocate for the narco traffickers, for all the illegals that are in this country. And by the way, I'll add one last point here. Of the 75% that she claimed were legal, which we know are not, if they were deported, they were illegal, she might forget something else. That doesn't mean that they didn't commit other crimes that they simply weren't caught for, or were planning to do other crimes, or were in the middle of dealing drugs or other illicit things in this city. They might have been part of theft rings, all kinds of things, from burglaries to everything else. She doesn't know any of that. And the end result is the people in her state have a right to be safe. That means you get rid of the illegals, period. You're either here legally or you're not. Pretty simple as that. Okay, listen, folks, I'm going to end it at that. There's only a couple more stupid statements and going back and forth, them arguing. You can barely understand them. But thanks for your time for watching this. I ask everybody, like always, please like, share, subscribe. It helps the algorithm. I'm really trying to get my channel going. If you like what you see, I'd like to give you more content. I'm working on getting better equipment. That's coming soon so that I can have better everything from lighting to backdrop to all the good stuff. But that's not the main important thing. The main thing is content. I'm hoping you guys are getting information that from a perspective you may not see. How do we solve these problems? This senator just needs to go. Stop voting in people that want to play politics and instead vote in the people that actually want to do something for the citizenry, for the vote in people that want to do things for the people who live and in the district where you're going to vote this person in, right? That's what you got to start doing. You got to think about your immediate neighborhood, your local Congress, aside from just the senator. That's a whole other matter. But that's the whole state. Okay. Also, you don't be afraid to click my the fuzzy quirk down below. That's linked to this. I'm as I've stated before, I'm a certified sommelier. If any of you guys are interested in booking me for any of your parties, you want to learn about wine, you want to have a good time. I also have a sales license. I can sell wine, all that kind of stuff. So we'd have a really good time. Check out my website and get in touch with me if you want. I will catch you on the next go around. Take care.